The most shocking part of this entire collapse isn't that Chip Kelly was fired. It's that it took this long for someone in power to acknowledge the obvious. Week after week, this offense walked onto the field looking like a malfunctioning machine, leaking oil, missing pieces, rattling and shaking its way through drives while everyone else in the stadium could see that disaster was inevitable. And yet the coaching staff kept insisting it would fix itself, that one adjustment, one game plan tweak, one halftime speech would suddenly unlock something. But nothing ever did. Instead, the Browns game became the moment where the entire football world watched the engine finally explode. 10 sacks. A complete offensive shutdown. A quarterback who looked mentally and physically overwhelmed. A stadium full of fans forced to witness a team that looked like it had quit on its own identity. That is when denial became impossible. And that is when someone, somewhere in that building, realized there was no more protecting the experiment. No more pretending the system just needed time. No more hoping that the coaching staff could simply will this roster into something it clearly wasn't. The Raiders spent the offseason building around Chip Kelly's vision. They tailored their personnel to fit his system. They hired staff to support it. They drafted players specifically for it. And in return they received one of the most dysfunctional offenses in the NFL. The moment Kelly walked out of the facility for the final time, it symbolized something bigger than a coordinator losing his job. It represented the collapse of the entire justification for how this team was built. What makes this even more concerning is that the problems exposed in Cleveland weren't new. They were magnified. The offensive line has looked disorganized all season. The protections have been inconsistent. The play calling has repeatedly put the quarterback in impossible situations. And every time the team faced pressure, every time the pocket started collapsing, the same issues resurfaced. Players hesitated. Assignments broke down. Communication evaporated. For an NFL offense to get sacked 10 times in a single game, there has to be systemic failure at multiple levels. Coaching, execution, preparation, game. And that is exactly what this team has been dealing with since week 1. The quarterback situation remains the biggest lightning rod. Geno Smith was brought in to run this offense, trusted with leading a new era. But leadership requires more than surviving hits and standing in the pocket. It requires accountability, composure, and the ability to elevate the players around you when everything begins falling apart. Instead, fans saw a quarterback who looked increasingly rattled, missing throws, hesitating in the pocket, and then engaging with angry supporters after the game. That moment crystallized the emotional fracture forming between the fan base and the player they were told to rally behind. When frustration spills into public confrontation, it's usually a sign that trust is breaking down on a deeper level. And yet, despite everything, Pete Carroll has refused to budge. His loyalty to Geno has become symbolic of a much larger issue within the organization. Carroll built his legacy on belief, on empowering players, on creating cultures where loyalty mattered. But in this context, that strength has transformed into a weakness. Protecting a struggling quarterback at the expense of the team's development is not loyalty. It's negligence. And when those protection decisions involve his own son controlling the offensive line configurations, the optics become even worse. Fans see favoritism. Players feel frustration. Executives question direction. The foundation of trust continues to erode. The Browns game exposed the contrast between two organizational philosophies in the most brutal way possible. Cleveland understood the assignment. They protected their rookie quarterback. They leaned on fundamentals. They supported his development. Meanwhile, the Raiders placed their quarterback behind a collapsing wall, forced him into high-risk situations, and watched him absorb sack after sack without making meaningful adjustments. That is coaching failure. That is planning failure. And that is why Chip Kelly is gone. But firing him only removes one pillar of a failing structure. The real challenge begins now. This team can no longer hide behind the idea that one coordinator was holding everything back. The issues are woven throughout the coaching staff, throughout the offensive vision, throughout the leadership approach. Players reportedly feel misused, confused, and unsupported. The offensive identity has become a moving target that no one seems able to describe. And the locker room is beginning to fracture under the weight of repeated disappointment. If Pete Carroll cannot produce visible improvement immediately, the pressure will shift entirely onto him. NFL organizations are ruthless when momentum disappears. Fans can sense when a team is collapsing. Players can feel when the coaching staff is losing control. Executives can see when a rebuild is being wasted. And right now, every sign points toward a team drifting without direction. That is how coaching tenures end. Not with dramatic blow-ups, but with slow erosion until the organization decides a new voice is necessary. The next few weeks will determine whether this firing becomes the turning point of the season or merely the latest chapter in another wasted year. If the offense continues to sputter, if the communication remains broken, if the quarterback situation remains unchanged, the spotlight will intensify. Because now there are no more excuses. The obvious scapegoat is gone. The system has been exposed. The head coach is now fully accountable for whatever happens next. And that brings us to the uncomfortable truth every fan already senses. This season is no longer about wins and losses. It's about defining the future of the franchise. Whether the team commits to real structural change or clings stubbornly to a failing vision will determine how long this rebuild lasts. The firing of Chip Kelly may be the first sign that the organization is finally willing to confront reality. But unless Carroll and the front office align on a true long-term strategy, this cycle will repeat again and again. So Raider Nation, where do you stand? Was firing Chip Kelly the turning point this team desperately needed, or just another temporary distraction from deeper problems? Do you believe Pete Carroll can fix this mess, or is it time for a complete overhaul? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep breakdowns like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support keeps this community strong, and the conversation is just getting started. Stay locked in, Raider Nation. The next chapter of this franchise is about to unfold, and it could change everything.